Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. My name is Josh Jacobowski. I am the Information Systems and Data Analysis Division Director for the Indiana Department of Local Government Finance. Today's webinar is going to focus on the spring data compliance review process. Currently, the Data Analysis Division performs 3 separate reviews. A review of the property tax data that gets submitted to us through the Gateway Abstract, and also the continuation of the real property review that was started in the fall, as well as the personal property compliance review started in the fall. So all that gets wrapped up here in the spring, and that's going to be what we'll be talking about for the most part this afternoon. I'm aiming for about 45 to 50 minutes here. We'll see how I do. I want to make sure I leave some questions at the end, as Jenny was mentioning. Please make sure if you have a question that comes up during the webinar, you type that into the Q&A box, and I'll do my best to try and get that answered for you. Okay, so on the agenda today, as I mentioned, we'll have 3 separate reviews that I will get into and kind of give some more detail on, but I also want to give some additional sort of surrounding information regarding the compliance review process here for the spring. So I have 4 main sections to this presentation this afternoon. The first one is actually going to be something that has hopefully already occurred. It's walking the county auditors through the process of submitting the property tax data here to the DLGF through the Gateway Abstract website. Again, hopefully that process has already been completed for each of your counties. That is, the deadline for it was March 15th, so last Friday. But hopefully, talking about it and kind of going through it step by step here will help solidify that in everybody's minds for next time in 2025, so that whole process will go smoothly for everyone. Secondly, we'll be talking about what sort of checks that the department currently looks at as part of our compliance review of the property tax data. So again, that property tax data is what gets submitted to us here, hopefully no later than last week. That comes in through the Gateway Abstract application. It's the spring submission, if you will, of property tax data. We have a separate review that we start brand new for that, since that was just submitted to us here in the spring. So that's the first review that we do. And then the third bullet point talks about how we'll be tying in the real property and personal property compliance checks that we did in the fall, and how we take that data and sort of compare it to or use it for some analysis with the data that we just received here through the Gateway Abstract, how that all kind of ties together and completes the spring compliance review process. Lastly, I would like to just sort of pivot away from talking about the data and what DLGF uses it for, and show how that then gets turned around on the Gateway website, and how the data that gets submitted to us by the counties, we then turn around and make available for the public. If you were on the webinar last month, we talked about how that particular webinar was focused specifically on the Gateway portal, and how there's really 2 sides of that. There's the login side, if you will, where the local officials can log in to upload their different pieces of information, different submissions to the department. And then there's also the public side of Gateway, where just anybody, where you don't need a password, you don't need a username, can access that site and get information on local property tax data throughout the state. So we'll be getting into that a little bit. I'll show some examples there before wrapping things up, and hopefully having some time there at the end for questions. So as promised, I want to first review the process for how the Department of Local Government Finance receives the property tax data from all of the counties. So you may hear me refer to this throughout the presentation as abstract data. That's what we use kind of internally to describe the data that comes in So I apologize if that's confusing to folks. If I happen to slip into that and call something abstract data, this is what I'm referring to. It's the property tax data that just got submitted to us. Like I said, hopefully no later than last week. It's the property tax data that comes in the spring. If I refer to that as abstract data, that's what I mean. But again, hopefully this will serve as a good recap for everybody and solidify how this process works for next year. So I want to first I'll be brief here, but talk about kind of the history of the Gateway Abstract application. It has been in place since the Pay 2019 cycle. That has served as the main mechanism, well, the only mechanism really, for the official submission of the county's abstract data. Prior to that, prior to the 2019 cycle, it was actually conducted, I think, through an Excel file, an Excel spreadsheet that got sent around to all the county auditors, and there was a lot of manual data entry. That was something that the department wanted to move away from and just help smooth out that whole cycle. And so a lot of work went into developing an online application through the Gateway portal where counties could upload this data to us directly. So the way that works now is that the county auditors generate from their local tax and billing systems a series of text files that their vendors are able to provide and upload that directly into the Gateway Abstract system. The tax data and adjustment files are part of the text files that are uploaded to Gateway Abstract. Those are probably the two main ones that we use in a lot of our checks that we do. But it's key there that the data gets loaded directly to us. There's no chance for a typo occurring if we're just entering these things into an Excel file. One thing that I wanted to touch on, I don't think it's applicable anymore since it's been so long since we've been working using the Gateway Abstract application, but just in case there's some folks who remember all the way back before this time, there used to be a need to email these two data files here to the department, usually using the data inbox, the data@dlgf.in.gov. That is no longer necessary. So we get all of the text files that we need, the data, the information comes in through the Gateway Abstract application. We don't need a separate email containing the tax data and adjustment files any longer. Now, we will need the lock modification reports, which is something that I will get into in a little bit more detail later on another slide. So county auditors, if that's something that you haven't submitted yet to us, please pay attention when I get to the slide on that or get to mentioning that specifically. That's an important piece of the spring compliance review process, and it's something that we need from every county to be able to accurately do a compliance review of your data. So, and I'll have visuals for this here coming up, I think in the very next slide or the one after that, but after the text files have been successfully uploaded, the county auditors will be clicking a button to run the abstract calculations, and then can review the results from those calculations immediately in Gateway. That's another big improvement that we got by having this application online. It speeds up that whole feedback process, so you're able to almost instantly get that data and be able to see the results of your upload with some of the different calculations that we run online. I say instantly, but I think probably people from the larger counties especially know that it won't necessarily, there's a lot of calculations that need to be run on the back end. The software goes as fast as it can, but sometimes it will take up to a minute or two for those larger counties. So just a heads up on that. Try to make sure you're being patient with the application when it's running those calculations. But once everything has been uploaded, once you've clicked on that Run Calculations button, we do ask then that the county auditors review all of the various screens under the abstract sections, and then complete their official submission under the review section of the Gateway Abstract. Again, I'll have some visuals up here. I've got some screenshots. That always helped me learn when I was a kid and going through school. I'm a visual learner, so I try to include that as much as I can here in the presentations that I do. So I'll have that here on the next couple of screens. But something else that changed that I want to make folks aware of, the DLGF's budget division is now responsible for reviewing the abstract submissions and will ultimately grant final approval of the abstract. Previously, that was done by the State Comptroller's Office, which was known previously as the Auditor of State. That is no longer the case. The Gateway Abstract or the abstract approval process has been transferred over to entirely to the Department of Local Government Finance. So that is something we do internally now. Previously, we had just been responsible for collecting all of the data, collecting all of the files, and then making sure it went or it was successfully delivered to the State Comptroller's Office, and then they were the ones to perform the review. Now that review is being done internally here within DLGF. So that's a new change. In addition to the abstract application, the approval process becoming a DLGF responsibility, we have started working on some of the different features within the Gateway Abstract application and trying to add some additional functionality in there with it. I'll be talking about at least one thing that I know that we added in this time around. We're looking to add some more features in the future. I know that we did quite a bit of behind the scenes work on the application to clean some things up a little bit this first time, and hopefully in the next year we'll be able to have an even better product for everyone to help get the data submitted to us. And then I think I mentioned this earlier. Traditionally, that the deadline for the submission of data in Gateway Abstract is March 15th. So hopefully that is something that you've already, county auditors have already gotten everything submitted as of last Friday for that. Okay, so I promised a visual. Here we go. This is obviously the Gateway landing page once you have logged in. So I mentioned that there's two sides of Gateway. There's the public side of Gateway where anyone can access some specific data sets or some specific pieces of information. And then there's the local officials login page where everything gets uploaded, where we use this as an upload tool to get information that the state requires. Specifically, we'll be talking, as I said, about the Gateway Abstract application. So in my visual there, I've got an arrow pointing to the link for that. But if we were to click on that link for abstract, it would take you to a page that looks like this. It talks about the current tax year, 2024 tax year, and just some of the different. We give some brief bullet points there, talking about some different information or some things that might have changed for this current year, and what that's going to look like moving forward. But it will take you to the county page for your county, and then there along the left side there will be the menu that goes vertically for all of the different sections of the Gateway Abstract application. So the first thing that you would do, and again, this is something that hopefully everybody has already done, but just reviewing it for next year, as you'd click on that link right underneath that abstract home that's highlighted on my screen for the pre-abstract survey. That gets some questions established right at the very beginning. That's an important piece of it that helps us gather the information and get a better look at how everything is sort of shaping out, or different pieces of information for your county. And then right underneath that is a new feature that we've added on for this year called property tax relief for those counties that participate in the property tax relief program. It used to be that there was a property tax relief workbook that was essentially completed and again sent by email and kind of back and forth through Microsoft Excel. We've tried to streamline that process this year. So that is now built inside of the Gateway Abstract application. So that isn't going to be part of what I'm talking about here in the spring compliance review. But I did want to make mention of that this is how that is accessed, and all that is done first before the actual files get uploaded to us. However, for our presentation today, and what we'll be talking about is all the different files that we need to be able to perform our compliance reviews. So if you look all the way at the bottom under the data section on the menu to the left, you'll see that file upload link. If we were to click on that, it would go to a page that would look like this. And this is where all of the files get uploaded into the system for us to then be able to look at on the DLGF side. So as I mentioned, there are 7 different files that are required for this upload of the property tax data. The TIF tax file, TIF sum, adjustments file, TIF tax supplement, the ABCERT rate, the AB tax sup, and the tax data files. All 7 of those need to be uploaded for this to be considered complete, for the file upload process to be done. Once all 7 of those have been successfully uploaded, what you should see next to each one of those in that box kind of in the middle of the screen is a green box showing that it has been completed. If for some reason it does not upload correctly, or there's a problem with the file, then you'll see a red box showing that it did that particular file was not uploaded correctly and is not in the system. However, if you get what you're looking for, after you upload each of the 7 different files, you should see a screen that looks like this. As I mentioned, kind of that green box with a completed marker right next to it. As you'll find here throughout Gateway, we've tried to make it a pretty consistent marking system that whenever you see something that's green, that means that you've done it correctly. Green means go. You can go on to kind of the next step of the process. So for us, via the screen, since we've loaded everything in, we've got all 7 files correctly uploaded. The next step in our process is to hit that run calculations for the upload. We don't want to hit that until all 7 files have been completed and we're seeing all green across the board there in that box. Once that happens, that run calculations is going to cycle through all the different calculations, if you will, in the background. And as I said, that can take a little while, so you want to please try to be patient with that, especially if it's a larger county. There's a lot of calculations that need to be run for that. Once you hit that button, give it a few minutes to cycle through all of the different calculations that it needs to make before moving on to the next piece of it. Once you have that, though, once you've done that and you've looked at all the different calculations, you can go through and look at the different abstract sections. Specifically, we want to look at that county review section all the way down at the bottom, but also spend some time going through those other abstract sections because it will have good information for you there as well. But this particular section, there's some we've noticed in the county review section, we try to put situations that have where data checks are going beyond the comparison thresholds. So in these circumstances, it will be a situation where the system has spotted something that looks off. And so we're asking the counties to kind of take a second look at this specific section and write in a brief response, giving us some additional information as to why this might be. Maybe it's an error and that's something that we need to get corrected, or maybe there's a good reason for it, in which case we would like for you to, again, type in that county response there in that designated section for that particular item that we've noticed, and enter that response in there. Once that has been completed, and you can see on this one there were 9 in this example of sections that needed to be where we needed a county response on. Once we've gotten that all the way done, The next piece of it is the confirmation of the reviews and the signature. So what you're looking for there, in order to sort of go to the next step in the process, is there needs to be a green check mark next to each one of these sections showing us that you have been to those sections in the abstract and you have reviewed the information that has populated in those sections after the run calculations button was hit. So this is what you should see here in that. Again, green means go. We've got all that kind of across the board there. And then the final piece of it for the submission purposes is an electronic signature saying that you have reviewed and confirmed the abstract data based on what has been uploaded. You put your name, your title in there, the 4-digit PIN that you have for the gateway application, and then it will, I believe, gives a date and time stamp on there for you once you have that submitted. Okay, so again, hopefully that was a review of something that has already occurred in the county auditor's office, where all that data has been uploaded to us. I'm now going to start pivot a little bit and talk about what the data team will be doing, and so, well, at least what the DLGF is working on with our review process of the tax data, of the abstract data that gets loaded up to us. So these 7 files that get uploaded to us, it used to be prior to the application coming online, prior to that Pay 2019 pay cycle, we sort of shared this responsibility with LSA. That is no longer the case. The department now serves as the primary agency with the launch of this application, and we oversee the entire compliance review process of this property tax data. So this is the only time that it comes to us is through this abstract data submission through the Gateway Abstract application. Well, the real and personal property data that was received back in the fall. And so we have already performed some compliance reviews on the data that we had already, but the property tax data compliance process takes place in just this one shot, if you will, in one phase during the spring. I'll get to the real property and personal property data compliance reviews where we're continuing the work that we started in the fall. But for right now, we're going to focus on the property tax data compliance review process. And again, this is the one submission is all we need to be able to conduct our review for it. So when that run calculations button gets hit, there's several review processes that take place automatically within the Gateway Abstract application itself. It's not anything that my data team needs to kind of go over manually. It's something that runs automatically. We designed it with the application itself to check for some specific checks that it can be done just automatically. So here are several things that we check on when the data is uploaded directly to us and the run calculations button is hit. We check on the parcel and property record number format, make sure all of that is correct. If not, there's errors that pop up there in the system. We check for duplicate parcel numbers, the state assigned taxing district. So we do a check on that, or the system rather does a check automatically to make sure that that's been assigned to each one there. We check for invalid property type codes, invalid adjustment codes in the adjustments file. We check for the TIF district ID format for all the different TIF districts that are applicable to your county. All that gets done automatically by just simply hitting that run calculations button within the abstract application itself. However, there are still a large number of checks that we have to go through and get a little bit of a closer look at. And that's where my data team comes in and performs a separate review outside of the Gateway Abstract application. So we actually take all of the information, all of the data that has been uploaded to us through those 7 different text files. We export that information and put it in a different format or a different set of compliance checks that we run through manually. Some of the things that we're looking for there is we do check for any negative or non-numeric assessed values. Obviously, that would cause a problem with some of the data if there was some negatives or letters instead of numbers with some of the assessed values. We check for any blank taxpayers name that's going to jump out as a red flag in our review process. Whenever there's a government-owned parcel, property class code 600 through 669, those should always have a $0 AV. So that's one of the checks that we run on the data side of things, is making sure that that's the case. If it's not, that's something that we flag as a potential issue. Any non-government owned exempt parcels, so the rest of the 600 class, if you will, the property class code 670 through 699, I believe those are some instances of not-for-profits, I think, that start out with an AV, but then the exemptions and deductions should bring that down to a $0 AV. And so that's something that we check for on the data side of things as well. And then finally, I mentioned that those two files there, the tax data file and the adjustments file, are something that we take an especially close look at. We'll be checking the property tax cap additions for those files in particular. Within the property tax data compliance check, we take the information that we've gotten from the tax data file and we compare that back to the real property data that we received in the fall and compare that to the parcel file. So on the property tax data compliance check that we run, the things that we're looking for there is if there's any missing records in either data set. If we've got a record in the tax data file that isn't in the parcel file, well, that's something that's a potential issue, and we flag that. We also look for any discrepancies in gross AVs kind of across the board there. And we make that comparison not only on the real property side with the parcel file, but we also take a look at the personal property side in comparing the tax data file to the pers prop file. Again, we're checking for mostly the same things there, and missing records and any discrepancies in gross AVs, but we do that kind of across the board. This is where it is extremely important for the DLGF to have a copy of that lock modification tracking document. It's to help verify these discrepancies in the gross AVs. If we don't have that, there's a very high likelihood that your county is going to be non-compliant in its property tax data compliance, because that is a key piece that we use to help us sort of smooth out these discrepancies that we're seeing between these files from the fall and versus the files in the spring. So I know I said lock modification tracking document. I think that is a term that we use here internally within the department, within the DLGF. So that may have a different title, like that might be called something different with your tax and billing vendor. But they should know what we're talking about there. So make sure that that is something that has been sent in to the department via the data inbox. I'm going to have that link here on my next slide, the email for the data inbox. But super important to get those in. I know my tax data analyst Delbia is doing a great job of going through the data inbox and making sure that we've received those from the counties that have sent them to us, and organizing all that information so that once we've got everything ready to go and we can do that export of the text files that have been sent in through the Gateway Abstract application, we've got the lock modification tracking document ready to go so that we can help or that will assist us in our compliance review process that we're going to do. So please, 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 sooner rather than later, get those lock modification tracking documents into us via the data inbox, which you will see here on the next slide. It's there at the bottom, data@dlgf.in.gov. But again, this is a standard report set that has been set up in the county's tax and billing system. In order for your vendor to be certified by us, they needed to be able to provide this document. So that is something that all software vendors, all tax and billing system vendors should have in their systems. Please make sure that you, if you don't know what I'm talking about here when I say lock modification tracking document, you reach out to your vendor to get that submitted to us as soon as possible, please. What this document does is it provides an inventory of all the property records that have had their gross AV modified between the time of the roll and balance process the previous summer to the point the auditor's office calculates taxes for the current pay cycle. There's changes that are going to happen, right, between what we get submitted to us in the fall and then what we see here in the spring that comes in through the Gateway Abstract application. This document helps us, it makes sure that everything looks the way that it should in our data checks. It smooths out these differences that we're seeing. So please get that into us when you can. Okay, when say we go through the property tax compliance process, the department has completed its review. We're going to email the county auditor an email kind of outlining your status, as well as 2 different documents as attachments in that email. One of the attachments or one of those documents is going to be an Excel file. That is the property tax issues workbook. And one of the documents is going to be a PDF file, which is the property tax compliance report. The Excel file is something that will really help you get kind of in the weeds. It's going to provide an itemized breakdown of all the different records that we spotted something in that contained a probable or possible error based on our different compliance checks that we've run. So that is something that's going to provide a lot of detail. I'll get into kind of the specific makeup of that Excel file here, I think on the next slide. But that is where you're going to look for the detailed version of everything that was inside of our compliance check. The PDF file will provide more of a high level. It provides a summary of the statistical analysis of the submitted data and an official compliance status. That's probably the most important piece to a lot of the counties, is they want to know if they're compliant or not. Well, that will be listed on the PDF. That it'll be in a very clear, in a box near the top. It'll be green if you're compliant. If you're not compliant and there's some corrections that need to be made, that will be red box. Okay, so let's focus on that Excel file a little bit more now, though. The Excel file, the property tax issues workbook, the way that that's going to be organized is by multiple tabs kind of across the bottom. Each tab is going to correspond to a different check that we ran on our side, and list out all of the different property records that generated errors in our checks. There's some of these that we're not entirely certain if it's going to be an error or not, but that is an error. It's either certain or possible. We want to point that out to you so you can take a closer look at it and determine if it's something that needs to be corrected. Something else that that we do, as I mentioned kind of in an earlier slide as well, we take the information that we got in the fall in the parcel file, as well as the personal property file, the pers prop file, so the real and personal property, and we'll have some tabs listed on the issues workbook for that comparative analysis that we do from the spring data to the fall data that we received from the real and personal property. So look for those tabs as well. If a tab is missing, like if you go through the property compliance report on the PDF, and like each and every line on there represents a different test or a different review that we ran. So, if we have, I can't remember the exact number of checks that we have, let's just say there were 20 checks. That means that you would think you'd see about 20 different tabs across the bottom of the issues workbook. That may not necessarily be the case, because if we have a situation where there are 0 errors, we just don't have a tab there on the workbook, on the Excel workbook. So if there were only like 5 sections of the compliance report that generated errors, you'll only see 5 tabs on the bottom of your issues workbook. So something else to just keep an eye out for. Okay, so in terms of an official status issued at the end of the property tax data compliance review process, there are 2 different possible outcomes. It's binary. Either you are non-compliant or you are compliant. It's one or the other. If a county's property tax data is deemed non-compliant, then we need to make some corrections. We can't go any further along in our process. We need to review the errors. The county must review the errors, make any necessary corrections, and resubmit its data for another round of reviews. Okay, hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully we're able to be compliant on our first try, but if you're not, it's not a huge deal. We just need to go back and kind of correct some things to be able to move forward. So this is what you're wanting. You want your county's property tax data to be deemed compliant. When that's the case, when we send you a compliant status on that PDF file, on that report, no further action is required by the county auditor in terms of correcting and resubmitting the data files to us. You are good to go. We don't need anything else back from you. However, we do highly suggest that the county auditor staff should still review the items included in that Excel file, the issues workbook, and determine what corrections may be needed to the applicable records so that the same issues don't happen again in the following cycle. If we can clean things up here in 2024, they won't necessarily show up in 2025. So just because you get a compliant status on your property tax data review, that does not mean that it's a spotless review. We do have a certain threshold that I'll get into here on my next slide. So even if you're deemed compliant, highly recommend your staff kind of looks things over and see where corrections can still be made, even though you don't need to then go back and resubmit anything to us. So for this particular review cycle, for the page 24 review cycle, we're not changing anything up. The department will still be using that 3% tolerance level when reviewing the property tax data. So what that means is when we say a 3% tolerance level, what we're looking for, or what we're looking at specifically, is for a specific check, each error that pops up, or each potential error that pops up, will have an AV, an assessed value, associated with that check, or for a particular line item. So each record will have an AV attached to it. If the total errors that we're spotting under a particular check, the total AV from that entire list of records, from all the ones that are popping errors, exceeds 3% of the county's total gross AV, that data set is going to be deemed non-compliant. And for that particular check, if that's not compliant, then the data set will be non-compliant. Okay, so no new checks have been added to the page 24 review cycle. We're not adding anything new. We're still following the exact same format as last year's compliance review, so it should remain the same there. Hopefully that will be pretty clear for folks to follow. Okay, so as I mentioned, that was the kind of first review that we do. We actually performed 3 different reviews during the spring compliance review session. The first couple of parts that I was talking about there were probably a little more helpful for the county auditor's office. That's who we're going to be providing the feedback to, that with the personal, or the property tax data review. The next set of checks that we're going to do, like I said, is a continuation of the review process that began back in the fall of 2023, where we're going to take another look at the real property data that was sent to us, another look at the personal property data, and see how that kind of fits in with the property tax data that we've received here in the spring. So the process itself is pretty similar, or at least in structure, it's pretty similar to the property tax review data. We will have so the spring compliance review process of real and personal property is the second part of a 2-phase review. a primary review of the data itself conducted in the fall, shortly after the county submitted its data. So everyone was subjected to that review process already in the fall, and you were either initially given a non-compliant status back in the fall. If that were the case, we had to get some things corrected, and then once everything was resubmitted and it passed the compliance check in the fall, your county was given a pending status. The reason it was given a pending status, that was as good as you could get there in the fall, is because it's technically incomplete. We need to still perform a secondary review of the data set where we compare the records to the auditor's property tax data conducted in the spring. So, as I've said, I think a couple of times here, this is a continuation. We'll be finishing up the review that we started in the fall with this additional information we now have here in the spring. So the secondary compliance review of the real and personal property data in the spring is more limited in scope. We're not doing as much or as deep of a dive there on the data as we did in the fall. So we were able to go through that information or those data files pretty well in the fall. We're mostly comparing it to the additional information that we've received here in the spring. So just like on the property tax data, we continue to use this comparison where we'll be comparing the tax data file with the parcel file, again, to assess things on kind of the real property side, looking for any missing records in either data set, discrepancies in gross AVs, anything that's popping out at us there. And we do that additionally with the personal property side as well, so with the pers prop file. So we'll go through that. And when that is completed, there will be 2 separate emails that will come out to the county assessor's office. We will have an email for the real property data, so for the real property review and the finalization of that review, and there will be a separate email for the personal property data. Each email will, similar to the property tax data, will contain 2 files. So again, 2 emails with 2 files. So the county assessor's office will be receiving in total 4 different files. There will be a Excel file for the property assessment issues workbook for the real property data, just like there will be a PDF file for the real property data, and there will be an Excel file and a PDF file for the personal property data. So each email will have an Excel file and a PDF, and again, the structure of it is the same. That Excel file provides the itemized breakdown or the line-by-line information of all the different records that we spotted something in, and the compliance report provides that high-level summary as well as the official compliance status on there. What you're looking for is that green means go, that green box, so a compliant status as much as possible. Okay, this is similar to the property tax data. We're just kind of hammering this point home. The property assessment issues workbook contains multiple tabs. So again, each tab is going to correspond to a particular check on the PDF version of the compliance report. And then the one that's sent in the spring is going to look an awful lot like the one that was sent in the fall regarding the real property and as well as the personal property. Like, it will look exactly the same, except for some additional tabs on the workbook where we're doing this comparison data between the real and personal property and the abstract data that has come in. So it will be the exact same file. That issues workbook will be the same file that you got in the fall, but just with a couple of additional tabs added to it. Again, this is a binary process. Either you are going to be non-compliant or compliant. If we have a situation where a county's real and or personal property is now deemed non-compliant, the county needs to review those errors, make any necessary corrections, and resubmit its data for another round of reviews for our real property review process and our personal property review process. We have to get you to that compliant status before we can move forward. So if you get there, if a county's real and/or personal property data is deemed compliant, no further action is required. Okay, we don't need a resubmission to the data inbox. As long as you've got that compliant status, you are good to go to continue along in the process. However, again, just like with the information that we sent back to the county auditor's office, we highly suggest for the real and personal property data that we send back to you on those issues workbooks, that you still review those items that are included in the property assessment issues workbook, determine what corrections can be made here to the stuff that we're potentially spotting errors in, so that we don't have the same issues pop up on us in the following year. Okay, we've reached kind of the tail end of my my presentation. I think I'm a little squeezed for time here, so I'm going to go a little faster through some of this to make sure we have time for questions here at the end. But as I mentioned, there is a Gateway is not only a submission portal for all the local units, it is a way for the public to be able to review different information that we receive about local property tax data. So the Gateway public reporting site offers a variety of reports to the general public. You don't need a Gateway account to access it. You just go, as long as you know the website, you can go to it and get all kinds of different information. There's really a wealth of information that is provided here via Gateway. Information that contained in these reports comes from the data that has been submitted by the local government units via the different applications that we have inside of Gateway. It is taken directly from that information. We don't do anything with it, and then turned around and made available via the public site here. So certain data files that county auditors and county assessors submit to the department and the LSA are just available for download here from the site, as you will see hopefully on the next slide or two. So the two sections I'm going to focus in on the public side are circled there at the top. We've got a link there that will get us to a report search, as well as a link that provides us to a section where we can download individual files. I'm going to pretend first that we hit on that report search link, and it would take us to a page that looks like this. And as you can see, there's just a ton of information here. There's all kinds of different reports and different ways to slice and dice this data and get what you're looking for. In terms of the abstract, in terms of the information that gets submitted to us directly via the abstract, so the property tax data that comes in, those 7 different files, those are then turned around and used within this reporting structure to provide these different reports here. So we have AV reports. There's as you can see, there's a lot of different links and a lot of different ways to take this information that we're given here and break it out into more sort of digestible pieces or stuff that can match what a particular taxpayer is looking for. So this becomes available as soon as those uploads are made, and it is then can be absorbed or like I said, digested by the public. Similarly, this would be if you would hit the download option there up at the top on that Indiana Gateway banner. If you hit the download section, it will take you to a section of the Indiana Gateway where you can download the property files directly. Those become available after the DLGF has completed our compliance review process. So we will work with the Indiana Business Research Center to make sure that all of these files are placed on the website and via Gateway so that they can be downloaded by the public as well. So these are the text files themselves. Okay, I moved a little fast there through the end, but again, I wanted to make sure that we had time for questions. I haven't opened up the Q&A, but I'm not seeing any. Jenny, am I wrong on that? Has anyone posted a question?
No,
Okay.
we don't have any questions. We did have one this morning that wanted to share that we will provide an answer to. There was a question about condos and land and how that is correlated. So on some of those reports. So we will get that addressed and we will send that out to those that were in attendance so that you all can, we had another person that asked to share that. So we will send that out. The other question that we had come up this morning, and this is because it's a change in our process that we have done with the submitting the CE forms. What was the email address that we send that to? So it will be in the email that you'll receive later this week, but it's education@dlgf.in.gov. We can leave this open for a couple minutes. And so if anybody else has any additional questions that they would like to see answered, either here today or we will get an answer for you and respond to you for your question. But we'll go ahead and leave it open. Josh's last slide has his contact information as well as Delbia's contact information. So you'll be able to see that. It has, we also have a list of our kind of support needs that if you have questions, it has user guides, the information, you know, how to indicate those, the YouTube training videos, memos, and things like that. So definitely reach out to us if you have any questions that we don't get answered today or after the fact. But I'll go ahead and do a couple other quick housekeeping items in case anybody wants to type in a question right now. Like I said, we'll send out that email that will include the PowerPoint, the video, the survey, and the CE form. They will also be available on the DLGF website, so under the webinars page, so you can access those. And once the video is uploaded to YouTube, it will be on the YouTube channel. You can subscribe to that. You will get a notice when those videos are live. So if you are having questions or want to reference prior webinars that we have offered, you can go back and do that. You can also get CE credit for if you are unable to watch a webinar live, as long as it took place during your CE cycle, then you can go ahead and watch that and then submit the CE form. So you still can gain those hours in case you need that. So we can go ahead and wrap it up now. Doesn't look like we have any additional questions this afternoon, but if you do think of any, please reach out to Josh or I. Also, you can reach out to Delbia. They are both great resources for you and here to help you get your submissions all approved and through the process. So again, thank you all for joining us today, and we will hopefully see you in April.
Thank you.